Hey everyone, my name is TJ Mulderig and I'm going to be presenting on Cucumber, which is an automated testing framework. Cucumber is a really good tool if your project's guided by behavior-driven development. Um, what that is it's a framework where you're going to have a lot of collaboration between your business stakeholders, like your product analysts or your product managers, in the development of your product. And the way that they're going to kind of be involved is through living documentation of this for the specifications. And so you might have a business analyst writing Gherkin feature files for Cucumber in plain text language, which are going to define the requirements that your software product needs to be able to meet. And so that Gherkin language is very easy to write and interpret for those non-technical stakeholders. And the idea is that that creates a better collaboration between the business requirements and the dev team. So Cucumber product is a open source software package, and its primary function is to read in those feature files written in Gherkin or plain text language, and then execute your software code in order to validate that your software does what your specification says that it can do. And the main thing that it's bringing to the table is because those Gherkin files are plain text, you can have your business stakeholders be developing those. And that is going to allow for better communication and collaboration between those two sides of the house. The benefits that Cucumber brings to the DevSecOps teams are that your specifications are at your code level. So you can be, as your requirements are changing, your specifications are changing. At the code level, you can change the way that you are then testing those. Cucumber also allows for the automation of the user acceptance testings and the verification of those. Your test scenarios within your feature files can be modular and be reused across your different tests that you might have. And Cucumber also integrates well with other testing frameworks such as Selenium. Companies like JP Morgan Chase, Discover, Capital One, and AT&T all report using Cucumber in some fashion for their user acceptance testing. It is open source protected under the open source collective, so really any company could start using Cucumber in their project if they decided to. And currently an estimated 34,000 companies are using Cucumber. What kind of makes Cucumber stand out in terms of automated testing frameworks is that it did pioneer the behavior-driven development style, let's say. So there is a large community and there's a lot of documentation for it. And it does support cross-language across Ruby, Java, and JavaScript mainly. But if you were looking to do automated testing for BDD, but you are in just a different language, that's where alternatives would come into play, like SpecFlow, Behave, and JBehave. So SpecFlow would be specifically for .NET and test executing in C#. Behave is a Python equivalent, and JBehave is the Java equivalent. Cucumber does have some limitations. It's not ideal for fast-paced projects or small project teams, mainly because feature files can be some overhead and some extra labor to document your specifications at that code level. And if they aren't written well or correctly, that can kind of slow down your development if you're having to keep going back and fix feature files to get your testing aligned. Cucumber is going to be parsing those feature files as well as the step definition files, and there's a lot of regular expressions going on. So if you're naming your steps kind of in an ambiguous manner and they're not clearly defined, that can throw Cucumber off and throw some errors in your testing. And then also in general, if you are kind of being ambiguous and not clearly defining what your specifications are in a smart manner, it really throws off the whole reason that you're doing behavior-driven development to begin with. That being said, If you are doing behavior-driven development well, and you are writing your feature files and your step definition files well, Cucumber, the software itself, does parse and execute those feature files and those step definition tests very efficiently and does support parallel test execution. Security-wise, there's no major vulnerability currently reported per their GitHub for Cucumber, but there may be some associated vulnerabilities with the plugins that use it. Hardware-wise, there's no hardware requirements in order to use Cucumber. It's a very small software package. But software-wise, you definitely need the language that you want to test in and any dependencies or support for that language. Specifically for Ruby, Cucumber does have a test runner in the command line interface, and the outputs are shown directly in the terminal. But if you wanted a test runner to kind of collaborate across language or have your test reports be in a more pretty or shareable version like an HTML, you can always just download some optional plugins for that. There's no administration required for Cucumber aside from just the software installation, and all of that can be done and learned at their website, cucumber.io, which has really good information not only on Cucumber but also on writing good Gherkin feature files. And they also have a very active GitHub. Lastly, just wanted to show an example of a feature file and a step definition file. On the left is the rule.feature file, which in BDD, if it was being done as it ought to be, this would expect it to be written by someone like a business analyst. And there's two scenarios here. You can see a passing example and a failing example written in the Gherkin language. You can see the given, when, then syntax. So for the keyword, this will pass. When Cucumber is parsing this and it sees that keyword, it's going to go into the step definitions, that steps.rb, that Ruby file, and look for the this will pass keyword and see that it's there in that first code block. And when it finds that, it's going to execute setting the variable this will pass equal to true. When it hits the when I do an action, on the Ruby file, it will go down to that code block and do nothing. And then when it hits then some results should be there, it will go down to that code block and have the expect method called on that variable and then compare that to true. And so since this will pass was set to true on the given statement, true is true, so this example would then be successful. Oppositely, the failing example, you can see this will fail. That variable is then set to false, and we know as it gets to that final step, false is not true, so that would fail. So that's all I had for Cucumber. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned a little bit more about this testing framework.